Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. I would like to welcome everyone to the third and final of our informational Budget Committee meetings for budget development for fiscal year 26-27. As I mentioned, this is the third and final informational meeting. We will still have two more formal meetings. The next meeting, just as a reminder, you may have seen was originally scheduled for May 14th. That has been moved to May 12th. I'll remind everyone again at the end of the evening. First thing on the agenda is a review of the meeting notes from our meeting, last meeting on April 16th. We can take a moment to look that over if anyone has any feedback. All right, if there's no feedback on the notes, there also were no outstanding questions from the last meeting. So with that, this is the informational meeting that people usually look forward to the most. We are fortunate at North Clackamas to have a really outstanding team of educators, and this is the opportunity, one of many that they have to show the really excellent and exciting things that are going on in the district. So with no further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce our Assistant Superintendent of Education, Yvonne Dibley, and team. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, please, yes. I know how I don't do well with that thing.
All right. Thank you and good evening, committee members. We hope that tonight's presentation not only opens a window to our work, but that you will see how we direct a small percentage of our budget to maximize student outcomes. I'm very fortunate to work with these fabulous and talented women. We work together to ensure that we braid funds to optimize the funding that we have in a way that supports our common purpose. So with me tonight, I have Dr. Patricia Ahrens, who is the Executive Director of Elementary Programs, Dr. Patrick Hallen, who is the Executive Director of Secondary Programs, Jennifer Dove-Kiltow, who is the Executive Director of Student and Family Services, and Tammy O'Neill, the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Professional Development. The cadence of our report tonight will follow a format that will basically tell you about the what kind of funds do we have, what do we use our budget for, the so what, how does this budget make a difference, how is it making an impact, and then the now what, how are we utilizing what we've learned to make our future commitments and to learn from what we want to replicate. As you can see that the mission of public education has a focus on not only promoting global competitiveness, but to also ensure access for all students. And we take that very seriously as many of our students enter our classroom with a wide variety of life experiences and challenges. And we recognize that it is our moral and legal responsibility to ensure that this access is available for each one of our NCSD students. You can see that the sentiment is also mirrored in our mission statement. When it comes to our instructional work, we look to our vision, and you will see that there are several words that are highlighted. And what we aim to do is to create environments where we center relationships, because relationships are at the center of what we do. And we do so by honoring and fostering and cultivating joy. And we cultivate joy in learning, because oftentimes people think that it's one or the other, but there is a joy in learning. And we know that when there is a joy in learning, and when we cultivate joy in learning, then that is when we engage each and every one of our students. And that is how we get to success in life, college, and career. Our strategic point within our strategic plan outlines the pathway with which we strive to get there. You will see that there's many elements featured in what my colleagues will share with you this evening. Our overarching goal, or our big aims, have been for, I would say, 4 to 5 years now. There are 2 big aims. We aim to ensure that we have strong, multi-tiered system of support, which includes instruction, behavior, and social emotional learning, and that we cultivate instructional leadership. We do so by looking to hardwire continuous improvement as we strengthen these goals. Within these goals, we have 4 priorities, and these priorities are just focused within those goals. So the priorities look to universal core instruction, again, creating a thriving environment, prioritizing student well-being, and strong teaming and strong site leadership. As we look to do that, we also create goals so that we follow the cadence that our schools are doing. So as our schools benchmark their goals for their school improvement plans, we also benchmark our goals at the district office. So as you can see, there is a cascading effect where we have goals at the district office, they cascade to the school improvement plans. The professional learning communities are also aligned to those school improvement goals. There are classroom goals, and as many of you might have seen through our various instructional reports, students also set instructional goals. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Good evening, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to be here tonight. So what we're going to do now is kind of take all the aspects of our commitment with our district budget and explain to you what do we do and how those are reflected in our schools. When we talk about the foundational skills in elementary programs, we mainly focus on 2 main drivers. The first one being the literacy grants, and with that, we want to ensure that teachers have the capacity and the learning and all the tools that they need so they can teach our students. The other piece of that, the other driver is school improvement funds. So it's our roadmap, and with that, we work with every building to sharpen those plans and moving away from trying to do everything and really focusing on reading, math, and the sense of belonging for our students. And we do know that when students feel like they belong to their school and their community, that's when they feel welcome and seen, and they thrive in their academic education.
The Oregon Comprehensive State Development Grant is a federally funded literacy grant that goes to districts through our state, and it actually is our funds available to K-12. Additionally, as supplements, our IDEA and Title III provide services for students with disabilities and our English language learners. They help to meet the academic standards, and this has to be through the supplemental staff and resources and professional development. It's never to replace any kind of core programming, but instead to help provide access to that. In sum, the funds are targeted to build educator capacity and expand the use of high quality materials evidence-based materials to support all of our students.
Good evening. The student investment account contributes to our schools by focusing funds for students in two main areas: student mental and behavioral health needs, and increasing academic achievements for students to reduce academic disparities for students who have been historically, who may have historically experienced disparities.
Right, and high school success, which is often also known as Measure 98. We've been talking about it for years. It supports students in realizing our vision that they graduate from high school, college, and career ready, and are able to take those steps and actually have the choice to make those decisions when they leave our system. There are some primary buckets that particular grant really focuses on: college and career readiness, access to accelerated college-ready coursework, student engagement, and career technical education.
Okay, so as you can see on the left, you will see all of our key funding streams from student investment account to federal school improvement plans, making it almost just the 5% of our total district budget. Because of these are targeted dollars, we hold them to a rigorous return of investment. We don't just look at the figures as expenditures, but we really ask ourselves the questions: what are we achieving with this amount of dollars? We look into the return of investment through the three pillars that you see on the screen. The first one focused on student impact outcomes. And that means that we try to move forward or beyond asking the question. And then our goal is to provide this dollar to move the target in our students in elementary schools. Second, we look at the cost effectiveness and how many students and how many staff members are we serving. And we also look at the data to see, is it what we are doing is working, and are we moving students' proficiency levels in our schools. And finally, we make those recommendations, and based on those results, we decide to either stop or adjust or abandon any of those practices or scale up, because we are always looking at what is the data showing us that what we are doing is working. And if it is, then we just try to scale up to other grade levels or to all schools. Got investments.
Yeah, it's first gen.
Okay. So I'm going to highlight now for you some of our continued investments in student mental health and well-being. And many of these investments are to ensure that all students have consistent access to academic, social, and emotional supports. Many of these investments are for our students out of the student investment account. We've maintained school counselors at every site, as well as social workers in our high school feeder systems. In addition, we have family advocates available through the Wichita Center as part of our McKinney-Vento team. All of these folks are an important part of a tiered system of supports that allow us to respond to our students and our families and their needs. Through partnerships like Stronger Oregon and Trillium Family Services, we have therapists in every school that allow our students to access this important resource right at their school settings. They do not have to leave the school during the day in order to access a mental health therapist. They can do it right there at the school. This is complemented by substance abuse counseling through Northwest Family Services, who provide targeted intervention and prevention services. This is paid for out of our high school success grant, out of Measure 98, as opposed to SIA, which are paying for some of those other services. In addition, we've invested in 34.47 FTE for school-based student positions. So some of the examples of those positions would include health and wellness specialists, school psychologists, special education teachers, and English language development teachers. We also have 33 teaching positions to help support class sizes, and that's critical to strengthening relationships and engagements with our students. And then finally, our nursing team, 4.6 FTE of our 12.7 FTE, and then 4 of our 6 health assistants are funded through our student investment account. And those folks support our over 16,500 students across the district. And coincidentally, next week is National School Nurses Day. So we're very grateful to that team for their support. But those investments reflect our commitment to supporting the whole child. And so very important investments that we're making through that, both Measure 98 high school success, as well as the student investment account for our mental health and well-being of our students.
As you heard in the prior slides, we now have quite a few buckets of money, if you will, to support our instructional investments. But these are the 4 main buckets of investments that we make in regards to instruction. So the first is our curriculum. Oregon state law mandates that we adopt curriculum on a 7-year cycle. So in North Clackamas School District, we get a committee of staff together to look at the recommendations that come from the Oregon Department of Education to select high quality materials that we ensure fit the diversity of our student body and that are available in Spanish for our dual language immersion program. Supporting these investments are our coaches. They both create the infrastructure of the implementation of these adoptions, and they provide the professional learning and coaching to ensure that the practices are successful and are the kinds of practices that can reach all of our students and support them to be successful. And lastly, there are supplemental services and instructional tools that we use. High impact tutoring is used in our schools that have the literacy grant. There are adaptive curriculums available in both math and reading, Dreambox and Lexia. And of course, there's additional coaching that takes place at some target schools that have our early literacy grant.
All right, in our high school success grant, one of the primary activities that the grant really directs us to focus on is our college and career readiness. Part of what we have accomplished in our schools is some really engaging coursework at the 9th and 11th grade level. Those are our CCR1 and CCR2 courses. And at the freshman level, that really focuses on sort of future planning, goal setting, career exploration. They take a visit to a community college and are really thinking about like, okay, so how do I do high school in a way that helps to set me up for success post high school? So that's a really primary focus there. And in our 11th grade year, there's a lot more focus continued on that goal setting, but also post-secondary, like realizing those post-secondary plans. What do I want to do after high school and how do I make that happen? We have had this course for several years now, and the state is now requiring that course is part of the graduation requirement. So we're like, check. But one thing that we do is we're always looking at how to improve those experiences for students. Along with that sort of in-school classwork and coursework, we also try to offer a lot of different experiences for students that they can take advantage of. For example, every year we send our juniors to the Career Expo. So we have a partnership with Portland Workforce Alliance, and our students get the opportunity to talk to tons of employers and organizations so they can really begin to think about like, oh, that looks pretty cool. That might be something that I'm interested in. And then be able to talk to the adults that are working in that particular organization or field about like, what does it take to do this? So we find that that is a really valuable experience. A lot of our students have access to mock job interviews, and we try to create as much access as possible. Some of you may have had the opportunity. I know that we often have board members that will participate in those. They're super fun. So if you are ever interested in doing mock job interviews with students, let me know. I'll get you hooked up. It's a really rewarding experience. It's super fun. We also have a College and Career Readiness Day in October that we put a lot of our funds and resources into, where our 10th graders, they are focusing on the pre-ACT, 11th graders, the PSAT, and then we have a ton of different workshops that our other students that are not doing those particular assessments can engage in. College visit kind of workshops and different career talks. And so we want to make sure that throughout the year that there's a lot of touches on what do we want? What dreams do we have for after high school, and how do we figure out how to get there? Another big area within this grant too is access to accelerated coursework. So this is making sure that students are college ready, that they have the experiences in college ready courses in high school so that it is not a shock to the system when they get to college. That's really important. It helps with that transition. And so we focus on ensuring our students have access to dual credit coursework, to AP, Advanced Placement, IB, International Baccalaureate, and we've seen a lot of increases in enrollment in those courses. And something that we pay a great deal of attention to is who is in these courses. Are our students who have often been underrepresented in advanced coursework supported in that enrollment, ensuring success? We also focus on supporting in this grant career technical education. You all know about Save in Schellenberg, and it is a real true gem. We have 18 career pathways, and we support not only the growth of those pathways, but getting students more access and equitable access. So the principal spends a lot of time paying attention to who is taking these courses and how do we want to make sure that all of our students are represented in these courses. So we have done some real, like in this next year, we're going to be adding to our fire science program, to barbering program, to health sciences, because we have a lot of students that are wanting these courses and they are forecasting, and we don't always have enough seats for everybody who wants that. So we're working really hard to ensure that we are opening up that access. And then, so let's talk about our ninth graders. We know that ninth grade year is the most important year in high school in terms of that transition and helping students become really successful in how high school works. We also know that if students are on track in their ninth grade year, that they are far more likely to graduate from high school on time. So we spend time ensuring that our freshmen, our ninth graders, are on teams, that there are dedicated professionals to working with those students, and that we also have coordinators that help those professionals to look at what's going on with students, what are the data points, what are we seeing happening, and then how do we intervene to ensure that sort of smooth transition and that success moving forward. And also, we pay a great deal of attention to the culture and climate in our schools, and we have been supporting restorative practices in our secondary schools. So, and the purpose of that is to create sort of what we call tier one climate, which is the sort of the what is infused in every single classroom to ensure that students are feeling community. Because when they feel they are in community and they feel like they belong, then they are more likely to be successful learning. So we also use a lot of our grant funds to focus on that as well.
So next, we're going to go over our literacy grant and our federal programs, which you'll probably know as our title programs. Our title programming and literacy grants support a multitude of investment. As I mentioned, our talented coaches and the high quality professional learning experiences they deliver are key to the growth of our students. That includes our coaches that support our English language development programming, which is a co-teaching model, pretty unique and incredibly successful in producing the outcomes, which is high school graduation that we want for our students. Also, our federal programming supports our new teachers. This funds are a week before in service. There is a new teacher academy, and they are provided with mentoring opportunities, both the first year, everybody gets it, and then second year, they can request it.
Through Title I, a requirement under federal law is that we provide services under the McKinney-Vento Act to any students that are experiencing housing instability and houselessness. And so we do that as a district by providing funding to a liaison, a social worker, and we complement that in addition with 2 family advocates. One of those I spoke to earlier through the student investment account. And that team ensures that students who might be experiencing houselessness can fully participate in school despite any housing instability. So they work to remove barriers to enrollment and attendance so that students can maintain school stability to the fullest extent possible. They set up transportation. They ensure that students have a place to sleep, that families have food, clothing. They make sure that their basic needs are met. Attendance, if students aren't at school, they give them a phone call, they send a cab, whatever the needs are for that family, they check in and they get them to school. If a student is living in Tigard and they want to come to our school, they make sure that they can come to our school. So that is something we do through federal funds.
Okay, so while my colleagues have discussed all the overall landscape, I would like to focus on what do we do at the elementary schools, and here's how we utilize those resources to ensure that every building is a high-functioning environment for our students. So at the elementary schools, we have implemented 2 main frameworks that helps with creating systems at our schools, one of them being STOIC and then CHAMPS. And these frameworks are not just to talk about behavior management. It's about creating a unified language across all the spaces in the schools, from the common areas, the hallway, cafeteria, playground, to the classroom, and how are the expectations when we are working in whole group, small group, or when we are working independently. So those frameworks are being utilized and implemented in all elementary schools. We have also intentionally hosted parent nights that support engagement, and like I said before, once we know the families feel that they belong, that they are welcome in schools, our attendance increases. And attendance in elementary is one of the primary predictors of literacy success. Going back to the return on investment, we have also partnered with Playworks, and the Playworks program at all of our Title I schools, and the data is very compelling. We've seen a significant percentage of decrease in recess conflict in our schools, and our students are reporting like higher levels of confidence in how to work out the rules before they start playing the games, how to be a leadership in the school. We have worked with fifth grade students become part of the student leadership at the schools, and they start monitoring, supporting, and being like the best buddies of the kindergarten and first grades when they are having conflicts. So the leadership team comes and supports. So we've seen a lot of results and positive impact from our students and teachers with the work that we've done with Playworks. Another piece that we've done is team structures, and that we have formalized in all of our elementary schools PLCs, climate team, core team, and site-based problem-solving teams in every building. These teams are the engine in our schools, and by investing in these team structures, we ensure that students' data, both academic and behavior, is on a daily basis, that we are always tweaking and reviewing the data and making adjustments so we can always know where are the supports needed for our students. So the bottom line is that we are investing in these systems because they protect our core mission. So when schools are well structured and all these little pieces of instruction and our structures are working, that's when we see a lot of successes in our classes.
This graph represents the number of students who have received mental health services each year since the 21-22 school year. They are year-end counts except for this school year, the 25-26 school year. The 25-26 school year represents the number of students who've received services as of early April. So as you can see, the number of students being served has gone up dramatically from the first few years that we've established partnerships with those mental health providers that are in our buildings. And while we believe that this growth reflects the increasing need for mental health services and supports among our students, we also know that it reflects the success of partnerships in expanding access to care. So that 1,245, that does not include the substance abuse counseling services. That's just solely the mental health therapists that we have in our elementary, middle, and high schools.
Okay, so now we are moving into celebrating our successes, and I would like to start by focusing on those strategic resources in our building. We've seen that our Title I elementary schools are outperforming their peers at a non-Title I schools, and as you can see, we've had a 5.5 growth in English language arts in our 3rd to 5th graders with the implementation of these systems that I've been talking about tonight. So great success in elementary.
Whoops.
We're also really excited about the growth in our middle years, 7.5% growth. That is a combination of grades 6 through 8. That is by far higher than any other large school district in the state. A contributing factor to that, and one that has been recognized for its success, is our professional development structures. We work with the Teachers Development Group, a nonprofit math think tank of educators who have trained us on math studios, so an embedded professional development opportunity. This year, we also invited our county colleagues into the learning. because that's what we do. When we do things well, we share it with others. So we invited them in, and they have expressed they want to replicate what we do, both of the studios and the fact that we ensure all the educators, paraprofessionals, administrators, and teachers who interact with our students, interact with our mathematicians, are trained and have this knowledge behind them on the what math education should look like.
We have also seen a 10% reduction in suspensions, and I think that can be attributed to quite a few things. We have, as Patricia was already talking about, we've really invested in supporting our schools in understanding positive behavior supports. We've been working with Safe and Civil Schools, which talks about a stoic structure of helping all of the humans inside a school building understand how the school works, what the structure is, and creates this sort of consistent expectation. And what we know is that when people understand what's expected of them and they can count on a structure, we all do better. Like even when, even at my ripe old age of 55, if I know how things are supposed to go, I do behave better as well. So, and additionally, we've been working a lot on, as I mentioned before, building community and helping to ensure that all of our students feel that belonging in the classroom. We have invested a lot in restorative practices. And also we've worked with buildings to really align what our disciplinary practices are and what our philosophy is and what we believe about how we ensure that we support our students into being able to access their education.
So part of our work to strengthen our global community is to provide opportunities through both our world language and our DLI programs for our students to become bilingual and be able to communicate both speaking, writing, listening, speaking in more than one language. When they do that and show proficiency, they can earn the Oregon Seal of Biliteracy, which is great on a resume, can both earn them scholarships and get them into a more competitive college. So we are so excited at the results we are seeing across the board for these students. I'd also like to brag that our English language learners graduation rate this last year was 86%, just a point shy of the overall graduation rate, which really does demonstrate the efficacy of our co-teaching program, which resulted in ensuring our students, our English language learners, were not removed from core teaching. On that same note, what you have on the right-hand side is two graphs showing two of the federal categories of inclusion for students with disabilities. So you'll have the greater than 80% in the general education environment and less than 40%, which is the most restrictive. So the greater than 80% is the target that we want. Research is incredibly strong that says that's where kids do best academically and that all kids do better socially and just learning those interaction skills that we want, again, for this diverse global community that we're building. So we want those top two bars to go up, and we want those bottom two bars to go down. So in our fall count, that's when they collect the data from us, the feds collect the data from us, 74% of North Clackamas students in special education were in regular class greater than 80% of the time. Now, that doesn't quite meet the state target of 78%, but that is an increase of almost 9% over the last 4 years. We're going to get close. We're going to get there for the next 2 years. I know it. And then the kiddos who are in the very restrictive environment, it went down to 7.63%. It's a 4% reduction over the last 2 years or over the last 4 years. And it is 2 years in a row has been below the state target of 8%. And that had not happened for the last 20 years. So our kids are being included and have access to quality core programming with their peers.
All right, I'm going to put a few numbers to some of the things that I've already been talking about with our high schools. So we have seen a lot of success in that sort of college-ready coursework area. For example, 711 more AP and IB students this year than there were last year. Additionally, if you add students who are taking dual credit classes, we get up to 2,452 students. We sent 991 students to the Career Expo at the Convention Center. 1,270 attended the virtual college and career day, which is really impressive. Do you want to know why it's really impressive? Because it's virtual and it's really easy to not attend. So that means we had a lot of kids that were like, yeah, this is important for me to do. So we're really proud of that. Currently, we have 90% of our ninth graders on track to graduate, which is an increase from what we ended up with last year. And so we're working hard to really finish this semester strong. 520 students took advantage of those mock job interviews, and we're hoping to increase that program because a lot of students report to us, oh my gosh, now I'm not so scared. Now I feel like I can actually do something like apply for a job and maybe interview. So it's important that we help support students in that. And then Tammy, you have this. This is a very important one, and that's why you get it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Don't take my fire away from me on this one. So 5 years ago, we changed our math pathways, and the results are incredibly stark. So 5 years ago, only 20% of our seniors took a fourth year of math. And this year, 50%. This year or last year? I think this is last year. This is this year, not forecasted yet. This is this year's number. 50% of our seniors are taking a fourth year math, and that's super cool. But also, of the 1,695 kids in courses, 1,500 of them are college bearing or college opportunity courses. Next year, all of them will be. Mm-hmm. All of our senior courses next year. We had one little course left over, financial algebra, left over. We had 186 kids take it this year. Next year, that won't be a case. We're replacing it with another college class. I think it's Math and Society, another college opportunity class. And so every single fourth year math will be available to have college credit, AP, IB, or articulated. So not only are we getting more kids, they're going to be ready to go to college. They won't have to take that placement test and just be ready to start their college career. So super cool stuff. Little teaser there. We'll have more for you next year.
Okay, so as we look at scaling up all of these successes and keeping the momentum at the elementary level, we will continue to invest in these two proven instructional models, which are the high dosage tutoring, or we also call it like high intensive tutors. We call it like HIT tutors. And then something that we've done is we're working with para educators at This year, we work with 6 sites in our from our elementary schools. We work with 12 para educators, and we created those small groups for students that were at risk at the beginning. And again, looking at the data, the results, when we look at our fast bridge, we've seen that those students that participated with the high intensity tutoring, they grew like 33%, make 33% aggressive growth in comparison to the students that did not receive tutoring. And because of that, we want to continue to work with students that are at risk. And so they get that like triple scoop of instruction so they can, close that gap faster with their peers. And also for math, we will continue to work with the TDG, Teachers Development Partnership, and to mirror the success that we are having with math. And with math looks a little bit different as we are working with the building administrator, the principal, and the instructional coach. And those coaching cycles where the coach can go in to help support teachers in the math block, and how we are working with habits of mind and habits of interaction, and how teachers are being very intentional in the way that they ask questions to students. And then we are improving students' voice and having that students having that metacognition about this is how I am learning and these are the questions. So being mindful of their own learning, but working with TDG and coaches and building principals as well. So that's what we will be focusing on for math and literacy for elementary.
And throughout our entire system, we've been really working on this notion of having cultures of improvement in whether it's in our departments here or any school building across our district, because we have done a really great job of putting in some really solid programming and practices in our building. And it's really important that we continue to look at what we are doing, see if it's working or if it's not working, and then look to improve in order to ensure that what we do works for all of our students. We're looking to move away from this idea of like random acts of improvement toward aligned acts of improvement. And so we just recently, we started some professional development with Studer, who helped us with the strategic plan. And what they worked with our coaches and our administrators on developing systems of improvement in a school. What kind of tools can you use to identify what problems that you have that you want to solve, what the root causes of those problems might be, and then how you use for example, a plan, do, study, act cycle to figure out, like, what are we going to try to really impact this particular problem? And then, did it work, what we tried? And if it did work, how are we going to scale it up? And if it didn't work, what might we change or what might we have to abandon? So schools that have really strong structures like that it's like it's all the time. It becomes a sort of a mindset or a habit of how you just do business, always looking at how to improve. And that's something that we're putting a lot of work into.
This year, the Oregon Department of Education went through a process of redesigning their Oregon Comprehensive School Counseling Framework, and that goes to the state board in June for approval. And so we will take that as a district in the fall, and our counselors will take that and align our comprehensive school counseling framework with that all throughout the school year next year as a district, and then at the individual school sites. And so that will be the focus of our work next year, making sure that we're in alignment with the state, and then rolling that out to the individual school sites.
And within college and career, we're continuing to do essentially what I was just talking about, and looking at the programming we do have and seeing where we need to improve upon it. I think I mentioned this before, and I'm going to get to the point where I hopefully don't repeat myself. But in our 11th grade class, for example, making sure that those standards align with what the state is requiring, and also looking at how engaging are those courses that we're offering students, and constantly revisiting and making them more engaging. Another example of how we're always looking to improve what we're doing is we used to have a platform for sort of career exploration, college application support. That was called Naviance. But we realized it wasn't really giving us what we wanted. So we started exploring another particular program and have been working on implementing that this year. That one's called Zello. Why it's called Zello, I have no idea, but there's probably a reason. So we don't rest on what we have in place. We're constantly looking to see how we improve that. Same is with our career technical programming, ensuring that more students get access, and also that the programming is actually really matching what industry standards are now, because things change. Because you had a program that was developed 15 years ago, that doesn't mean it should still be the same program, because it's not the same. A big example of something that Saban Schellenberg is working on is right now, computer programming is changing. And it's changing rapidly. And so how that program was set up has to be revisited, because it will be obsolete in like 5 minutes. So we pay a great deal of attention to constantly keeping up.
In regards to mental health and nursing, we're going to continue on. We actually have 4 nurses right now at a conference, and they're going to come back and teach their colleagues what they learn. We continue to have students who we treat with different health needs, and they are learning new skills every year. I'm not a nurse, and I don't pretend to know all that they do, but they work their magic. And I am impressed as all get out with the things they do for our students. And so when they don't know a skill, they go and learn it. And they work with their other colleagues around the county, and they lead their colleagues around the county. And so they will continue to support high quality care for our students. And in regards to mental health, our partnerships continue to grow, and they continue to provide quality therapy for our students.
So part of our special education team is a behavior team, which are some highly skilled educators, school psych, paraeducators, behavior coaches with expertise specifically in autism, who are requested by, who can be requested by school sites to help them with the behavior plans, with the implementation, and to train the school site staff there. This is a tier 3 team, not a lot of them, not a lot of kids in support. The tier 1 that we are really going deeper on in regards to our school climate is in the elementary realm is, and elementary and middle school realm is through, again, safe and civil schools, but our coaches have recently received additional training so that our instructional coaches, coaching for CHAMPS, so that they can support teachers to implement CHAMPS into the classroom. So as we talk about, we want professional development, training's good, but there's nothing that can replace that side-by-side coaching. They haven't had that, our teachers haven't had that yet for CHAMPS, and so next year we're going to be able to provide that for them.
One piece that I would like to add is that we often put principals at the learning seat. So all these things in focus areas, we always start all with the principals so they are able to support their teachers. We ask principals to learn first and leaders go first. So our principals are often attending the same trainings and with CHAMPS, with coaching, with STOIC. They are learning about, digging into the literacy, data literacy, or learning the work with math. What is it work and how I should be looking? What are the things that I will be looking for in when I go to a classroom to visit, and how I can provide actionable feedback to my teachers as a principal. So principals are also part of a coaching cycle and a coaching session, so they are able and equipped to support their schools.
All right. So what's next for ninth grade teams? Well, we have found a lot of success with ninth grade teams, so we will keep them. And we are asking our ninth grade coordinators to really focus on those cycles of improvement with the teachers working with ninth graders. So they are really delving into that idea of the PDSA cycle, the Plan, Do, Study, Act. And then that really supports them in not only being able to look really critically at what the data is telling them about their students in their classrooms, but get to the what's next. Because oftentimes when we look at data, we can end up stopping there because we're not really sure exactly what to do next. And these structures really help us to get there. So we begin to try things out. Did this work? Did this work? And so that is really going to be a focus within those teams moving forward. And also really high schools are looking at the lessons learned at the ninth grade level and looking to scale them up. Nelson has been looking very closely, for example, at their 10th graders and how do we take some of those supports from the ninth grade and fuse them into the 10th grade. So that is how we think about scaling up that work, because we know that support doesn't just stop at the ninth grade. We need to continue it on. And sometimes for some of our students, the 10th grade can feel like a bit of a step off off a cliff. So that's something that we're really focusing on improving.
So I hope we've been explicit in that we do not rest with status quo, right? We are constantly improving, and I think this quote really brings it home. The slide that showed the cascading of big aims, the goals, and how we align, because we don't want those random acts of improvement. We want to create structures so people know what the expectations are, and then they have the freedom to work within those expectations so that they can do those cycles of improvement. I think you've heard me say it time and time again that it is very important for all of us on our team to ensure that every child in North Clackamas gets a quality education, and that it shouldn't matter what teacher you get or what school you go to, that their instruction is high quality and that the outcomes that they receive is because of that high quality instruction. And I guess I just want to share a couple of wins. Despite all of the heartache that many of our neighboring districts are feeling right now, happy to say that we were able to allocate and staff for next year at the same ratios that we've been able to staff in years before. So elementary will be staffed at 1 to 25, middle school will be staffed at 1 to 29, high school will be staffed at 1 to 32. Again, with the addition of some FTE at Sabin-Schellenberg with, high interest programs that will be open. We hope that that's going to alleviate some spots also at the high school level. And last but not least, we applied for a $1 million grant at the state level for summer school. We were just awarded $950,000 for this summer, so we're super excited. It was late in the news, and we have not yet told the community, so you're our first to know, but we are super excited. We've been planning for it all year long, not knowing if we were going to get it or not, but we're happy to know that we're going to be able to provide those services to kids that, really need it, because all of these things continue through the summer. And with that, I will open it up to questions on all the information that we provided this evening.
Oh, so Tammy, you mentioned you opened up that math career professional development to neighboring counties. You mean other school districts? That's a sneaky way to recruit. Good job. And then question on the IB AP classes. Are those, they're intentional for get people college ready. So my question is, do we have the same rigor in terms of turning homework and stuff on time in those classes, or is it same as maybe a non-AP IB class allows in the comprehensive high schools?
Well, I will tell you that my freshman in college does not turn her homework in on time, and it's okay. So, oh yes, I think we have some not you dated perspectives of what college is and isn't. It's no longer this 300 person stand and deliver. They're doing small groups, they're working together. My daughter is able to go negotiate like she did in high school. Everyone said she wasn't going to be able to. Surprise. They want their kids to be successful too. So they give them extra chances. So that is not part of the stipulations on IB and AP, quality, you want the quality, the rich experiences, educational experiences. That's what, reading, writing, thinking, problem solving, that's what gets our kids ready. Yeah.
Sorry, just a couple questions and a couple comments. First, I have two kids in Saban-Schellenberg and also Nelson, and those programs they've taken and participated in are phenomenal. So thank you for that, and thank you for continuing to support them. And I do know many kids will be excited to hear that the fire, I forgot what you called it, but that fire class will be back online, because I know that's been, lots of students have been clamoring for that. So that's exciting to hear. Just a couple quick questions about your elementary schools. Do all of them, I might have blinked and not paid attention to part of this. Do all of them have access to Dreambox or Lexia, or only your Title I schools?
All of them.
Okay. Yeah. And then with regards to your reduction in suspensions, which is awesome, giving more classroom time to students, is there also a reduction in like your tier 3 referrals as well that align with that? Or are we just keeping naughty kids in class so that we're reducing that number?
I don't actually have that data for you, but it really depends on school. It tends to be, it's variable depending on where you are. But what we do is we encourage that if there is something to document, like if there is an incident that happens, we encourage those referrals to be written so we have documentation. The importance of doing that is that you can begin to see patterns and you can begin to intervene based off of what is a pattern with a particular student, or maybe in a area in the school. So it's really, it really becomes about like looking at trends in order to improve what's happening in the school. But I can't really answer that question in terms of where those referrals have been reduced by the same amount or not. I'd have to look into that.
I'd also just add that we have a lot of conversations about the function of the behavior. We have a lot of conversations about alternatives to, different consequences. We have had rounding with students that have been in an exclusionary setting. So we've asked them, like, what would have helped instead of being sent home? Like some of them have told us, I didn't really learn anything from being suspended. It would have been more helpful if this would have happened, you know? So we look at like, what are the tier 2 interventions? Where, you know, what adults could have helped you in that moment? If there was a behavior where they felt a little bit dysregulated, what would have helped you in that particular moment? And then that's where we also lean on the supports in the classroom, right? Because we have to ensure that the tier 1 supports in the classroom are in place. So are there predictable patterns in the classroom where the kids feel like, yep, I know exactly what is happening, so the structures are set for me to be able to, you know, function. I know exactly what my expectations are. I have my tools, right? So I have my regulation tools. I have a quiet corner. I have, you know, a wobbly seat that I could utilize when I need that. And how we teach kids to utilize those tools is super important. So we really look at, you know, what is the function of the behavior? We look at, you know, are there errors in that? But as Petra said, we want to make sure that all of the incidents are documented, because we want to make sure that we're seeing the data. We want to make sure that we're learning from it, and that we could obviously adjust and support, whether it's teachers or administrators, in that.
So that all sounds wonderful, and I'm sure you guys are doing a great job at all that. I know that behaviors overall across the nation have really, I guess, unraveled since COVID is maybe the way to put it. And at a recent board meeting, there were quite a number of speakers that indicated that there was perhaps a lot of room clears at a specific elementary school. I'm not sure if that's accurate reflection of what's going on at that school, or if that's, you know, something that's happening across the board. But knowing that those take away learning minutes from the remainder, you know, your balance of your kids, and it's a lot to get them back in the classroom and regulated again. Is there any kind of tracking that's happening to find out, you know, how often we're doing that and reducing that?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we do track all the situations in where the student or the class need to be changing their setting. And what we try to do, like, is not very different than secondary. We try to find what are the functional behavior of the student, what are the supports, and what do we need to do to ensure that, you know, there are supports in the classroom, or the understanding that why are we removing the other students, and there's a scope of the work, you know, for what for one specific school can be a room clear for something that is very manageable at a different school. So what we are trying is to provide that guidance to administrators and to teachers, and what can we do to prevent, or how can we make sure that we can be proactive, so we understand the pattern of the student. Is it a particular time of the day? Is the student having some difficulties when it comes to math? That maybe what is going on with math, that we can support the student, so the student doesn't, you know, escalate because I don't want to do math because I don't understand math. So there's a lot of observation, there's a lot of data gathering, there's a lot of conversations with the teacher. What do you need? What is working? Is the student has a behavior plan? Does the student have an IEP? Does the student have a 504? It is just, we are working with little humans, so it's not a cut and dry that this is, if then do this. It's just, we really have to take the time to understand the student as a whole being, and how can we support the student in particular. So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of data taken, a lot of experts in the classroom, school psychologists, learning specialists, the teacher, the principal, the behavior team. Is just like tier 1 first and foremost. Do we have all the systems in place in the tier 1? Then what can we do, the double scoop in the tier 2? Same as we do with academics, we do with behavior. What is a tier 3? And that's when the more students need, the more adults can come and support.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question about the literacy and curriculum. So I'm like so cautiously hopeful that this means that we're updating our curriculum for reading. And so I wanted to ask a couple of questions about, are we changing our reading curriculum would be number one, or are we using supplemental education to go partner with our reading curriculum, particularly for elementary school? And then the instructional coaches that are associated, which I think are probably like Nadia, et cetera, like are they Orton Gillingham certified? And then for the tutoring curriculum, I guess I'm just looking to make sure, because I'm seeing a lot of things about evidence-based, like are we looking at science of reading? And then are we changing our curriculum to match? Because I have an incoming kindergartner and I have an 8th grader who's returning from Park Academy, and I'm so nervous that we're going to go through the same journey of having to get tutors and switch to Park and like all this stuff to support my student with dyslexia. And I really want my littlest to not have that same experience. And so long and short of my question for funding of this curriculum program would be, are our kindergartners being taught to sound out the word with phonemes, or are they taught to look at the picture and guess the word? I'm seeing some hopeful nods, so I'm hoping this means we're changing.
Oh, sorry. So when I think of elementary and the things that we are trying, we are still using some parts of the curriculum. However, we have, since maybe 3 years ago, we have started to buy some supplemental materials, some decodables at student grade level. So we've been doing a lot of work. And with the Science and Reading, we have offered cohort opportunities for teachers to attend specific trainings after school. So that cohort has been growing and growing. So that's how the literacy grant, some of the funds from the literacy grant have been used. We have the fortune to have specific certified and highly qualified coaches that are working just with kindergarten, so that our coach for kindergarten knows all the ins and outs about when students are supposed to be working on letter sound. And then, by this time of the school year, all of our kinders should have learned our letter sounds. And then what is the goal for kindergarten? Well, we should end kindergarten with CBC words. And we know that this is a good marker. If we don't have our students ending first grade with CBC words, that we need to do something. So that is part of the world supplemental materials that we have bought to ensure that students are getting that. Yes, on the science of reading, that has been our North Star since it came to light in many schools and everything, and we continue to improve and do everything that is research based. I think we are on 2 years far from starting the new English language arts adoption, so we are starting that process. What was on so adoption, decodables,
coaches, Orton
instructional
Gillingham.
coaches.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's a yes as well.
So there's a huge reduction in the like sending home heart words and more of a focus on
Oh,
CBC
yes.
words. Okay, I'm
Yes.
so pleased
Yeah,
to hear
in
that.
phonics, phonemic awareness, and fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. That is like the big 5 that we work for literacy. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Just on the record, the last adoption was 22. Okay. And then, as Patricia said, I think with the literacy grant and all of our literacy funds, that's where we've been able to really focus on everything that we've done to make all of our materials more robust so that we can really supplement what we had with science of reading. So we have trained dyslexia, like we have a trained dyslexia educator at every building, and then our coaches, et cetera. So everything that we do is very much with that focus.
Only addition I'd say is we trained 20-ish educators, a lot of kinder up to first, learning specialists, coaches on IMSE, so the Orton Gillingham. So they infuse that in. because it matches our curriculum. So kind of gives a little stamp right there.
That's great. I have such a concern about like pay to read by pay to tutor, right? And so I'm really pleased to hear that we're making some changes in that.
I have a actually comment for you. I have a second grader, and same concern when I sent him into kindergarten was around that. And I'm very happy to report I don't see any of the signs of balanced literacy or 3Qing, any of that. I was very happy when he came home with homework and all that sort of stuff, and he is a wonderful reader. So more than stamp of approval on what's being done at the elementary level. My question is actually a little bit higher up. I loved hearing everything about what's happening with high school, all the investments being made there, and I would love to hear more about investments being made in middle school, because I also know that's a huge driver of what happens then at the high school level. So if there are any highlights to share, I know you talked about Math Studio, but if there's anything else about the middle school level that you want to share about as far as investments happening there.
I can do curricular ones.
Well, the High School Success Grant really does focus on high school. So when I talk about the use of those funds, that it's really funneled in that direction. And I probably Tammy should really talk more about this, but there have been a lot of investments in middle school around coaches, which they did not have before, which are, to me, I think that's really huge. And also the Math Studio. So those are like, I mean, when I think about investments, those are two primary ones. We also have invested, and so I'll let you talk about that, but I'm also going to mention the restorative practices coordinators that have been supporting the middle schools in how we all figure each other out in in a positive way, because we know middle school there's a lot going on, and so how do we manage conflict? How do we build community? And so that has been an important investment as well.
So for middle school, we're by content, right? So kind of break it down in that way. Our science adoption just renewed our standards and revisited the articulation to the high school courses. Our math curriculum, as we've already talked about, is highly research-based, getting great outcomes, something that is used, has been articulated up through the high school right there. We actually moved standards that we used to teach in high school down to the 7th and 8th grade levels because they were ready for it. As far as English, we have coaches at every school. Half of that coach is focused only on literacy. It's paid for by the comprehensive literacy grant, and they're focused only on literacy. It happens a little differently in the middle school. Right now, we have this genius coach whose doctorate is in adolescent literacy and directs these amazing coaches. And we're focused highly on writing right now, just as this large foundation and catalyst for literacy, the elevation of literacy. We have a cohort of educators, adolescent literacy cohort that we've invested in to really hone their skills. So I will say that the middle school deep work around literacy is more recent because we just got the grant. And so that's only been 2 years. And so next year we'll roll out again and go more deeply with the writing work. So, oh, and we have a social studies adoption coming to the board here very, very soon with some really impressive high quality materials that our students selected for us. I'll say there's a lot of student voice on this one. So, we've been really successful in the professional development. Our teachers are really getting used to the Plan, Do, Study, Act, that continuous improvement, looking at our data and seeing what small cycles of improvement with standards as the basis can they make. So doing some great work around there.
We
I'll
all,
add, oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, we also support middle school after school programs. Just making sure that students have something to do after school. So teachers, a lot of times will have after school clubs, and we support that as well. So.
And I'll just add that I think it was 2 summers ago, we did a transition program from elementary to middle, and that was very, very highly received. Last year, we didn't think we were going to be able to run it, and we got funds at the very last minute, so we were able to do that, and that is part of our summer grant as well. So we will be holding another transition 5th to 6th with some 7th grade spots as well.
First, thank you guys for that presentation. That's always really awesome information to see. As somebody who works by day in the science department at community college, I have a special appreciation for the slides that represented the progress made through the college and career readiness program. I am curious because you mentioned trying to bring in people from students from, more underrepresented groups and, first generation students, things like that. Like, is there data available somewhere that we can see on, how much of that number increase is accounted for by those groups, or is it just the more typical groups? Is there?
Yeah, we do have that data disaggregated. I don't have it in front of me, but that is definitely something that we can articulate.
Okay, thank you.
And it is something that Principal Huya also presents to the board. Like with the last time he did his school presentation, he presented the disaggregated data. So it's also something we can.
Really quick, first of all, I just want to thank you all for your incredible work and expertise. I love how you strive to always do better for the students. Really, I see that. I think you all exude that. I appreciate that. I also want to add my first grader is reading really phenomenally well. So I appreciate that too. I want to talk about, because in my day job, I work with really vulnerable kids. So my question for you all is, in the big picture, in this budget, I want to make sure that kids whose families have, or first generation kids, or fear of immigration enforcement, or trans kids, that this district is investing in supporting these kids. So in a big picture, what does that look like as far as this next fiscal year budget?
That's a great question. I personally, I think it's in everything that we do, right? It's not a pocket of money, right? Because it's the right to education. I think that's one of the reasons why we put the mission of public education in at the beginning, right? And we have students that, identify as LGBTQ, and we want them to find their sense of community and belonging, as Petra said, right? So it's so important to continue to find ways in which they can access clubs and their community and sports or whatever it is that they want to have, and that's important. I think that when we're looking at, access to dual language immersion programs, one of the things that we've been talking about actually is we just had our dual language immersion lottery, and we've noticed that our Spanish speakers they're not applying to the lottery. So we have our assumptions, and we're going to have to make some personal calls, right? So that's not something that you're going to see in a budget item, but we're going to make those calls, and we're going to say, hey, this is why this is important. This is what's going on. This is what's happening. I think a group that also is often lumped in together in a gen ed environment or in a summative environment, but we don't talk about, or that often gets put aside, is our special education, our students who are receiving special education, right? Oftentimes with behaviors, right? We hear it's like, well, they need to go out, right? They need to go somewhere else. And that's another thing that we consistently fight, right? They need access to their environment. They need access to instruction. They need access to their peers. They need access to all the things, and they just don't know how yet to communicate, and their behavior might be just sharing something that we're not quite sure about. An example, I'm going to share a story. We were talking to a principal who had a room clear where there was a student who was hungry. They had not had breakfast, and they got to school and they were very dysregulated. I know how I get when I get really, really hungry, but they're little, and there's all sorts of things that are happening in their home as well. And they're coming to school, and at least they're in school. We all know what the attendance data is looking like. So at least they're in school. And yes, they had a little bit of an outburst, and there was a room clear called, right? And did there need to be a room clear? Because as soon as the kid got breakfast, they were fine, right? So those are just pockets of things that they exist each and every day in everything that we do, and every dollar that is spent belongs to each, and I think that's why it's so beautiful how we say everyone, right? Because every one of those dollars, whether you have a high need, or you need an extension, or you lack the English skills right now, but you might be multilingual, or you just, need special education services. Every single dollar that we spent is a benefit to them. And I think that's another reason why we say 5% of our entire budget is what takes care of what we just shared tonight. So it's,
All right, well, thank you very much for that great presentation. Before we closed for the evening, one last opportunity for any questions that members of the committee may have. No? Well,
I'm so sorry to ask you this, Matt.
oh, no, not at all.
But when are we going to get that book? And please tell me it's not the day of. I'll drive here and get it.
We always strive to get the book out as soon as we can. There is a considerable amount of work that goes into the production and the preparation of that. So we will always strive to get it out as early as we can. Hopefully that Monday.
Thank you.
And just also want to mention again that the meeting next time, the next meeting has been moved up from May 14th to May 12th at 6:30. And also to your question earlier, Monica, that is one of the things that may complicate the being able to to get that out is the fact that the meeting has been moved up. So, all right. So thank you very much. I will see everyone